So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Something on these glasses I can't see. It's possible, therefore, that the sermon will make more sense. So, there's no question that in our country at this moment, we are in a dogfight. We're in a dogfight against a vicious enemy that has killed hundreds of thousands of people here in our country. And for a while, this fight was one-sided, with COVID winning almost all battles. And COVID didn't stand a chance against human ingenuity. And so we begin to win the battle. We begin to win the war. And we have spoken about this fight for a long time now. And I want to say that that's an enemy that we really couldn't see, but we knew was there. It was an enemy that was dominating the world. And that has become for us a wonderful metaphor for the battles we fight on so many fronts. And in many ways, that fight has spurred other fights. And we also know that in Afghanistan right now, there is tremendous turmoil. Again, it's an external threat. It's an external threat to democracy, to stabilization in the Middle East. But again, it's an external threat. This morning, I don't want to talk about the external threats that are easy to see. I want to talk about the most internal of threats. Not the internal threats that we find within our own country, not the internal conflicts that we find within our own communities, but the conflicts that we find within ourselves. And I want to offer a new definition this morning. We have often referred to the conflict within ourselves as the conflict between the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara. We have spoken of the evil inclination and the good inclination. The desire on the part of ourselves to do good, and the desire on the part of ourselves to sometimes maybe do bad. But I want to go one step further and suggest that the Yetzer Hara could possibly have an alternative definition. Not as the evil inclination, but as the inclination to do evil to ourselves. We all find ourselves at moments in which we have to find ways to tame the inner critic. We all have to find moments in which we can rise up against the voice that we have within ourselves that says we're no good, that we're not capable, that we're not strong, that we're not kind, that we're not insightful. That, I believe, is the worst aspect of the Yetzer Hara. The inclination to self-sabotage. This morning's parsha opens with a wonderful verse. Ki Tzetze lamilchama oleivecha, that when you go out to war against your enemies, there are rules to the game. And the Kli Yakar says the following. In explaining that the word oivecha is in the plural, the Kli Yakar points to the fact that there are many enemies that we have in the world. And the Kli Yakar is pointing to the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, the good inclination and the bad inclination that are always in conflict within each other. As Dr. Jeffrey Kress points out, conflicts are inevitable. Like change, conflicts are inevitable. And the Kli Yakar is saying that we have to always be fighting against the evil inclination. And I say the same thing to you this morning. We have to fight against that evil inclination. And that is the inclination to tell ourselves that we're no good, to put ourselves down. We live in a world in which we have this echo chamber, in which the social media has tapped into an algorithm to get us to repeat over and over again the same things that we already believe. And I believe that's true of our desire, whether it be subconscious or conscious, to sabotage ourselves. And that's why the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, an incredible Musar text, teaches something extremely beautiful. You see, the Shnei Luchot HaBrit is working right now under a rubric of that we're getting ready for the high holidays. And that every verse in the Torah, every pasuk that we read right now at this time of year has to be in preparation for the Yamim Noraim. You know that we are in the month of Elul, in which we recite the 27th Psalm over and over again. And in it we have the verse, Im tachaneh alai machaneh lo yirali bi. Im takum alai milchama bezot ani boteach, that we are going to face wars over and over again, but in God do we put our trust. Bezot ani boteach, says the text, in God do we put our trust, but I've always read it differently. I've always said, Im takum alai milchama. If you know Hebrew, you know the word milchama is feminine version. And then the verse ends, Bezot ani boteach. In that do I know is for sure, and that is that there will always be wars. And sometimes they'll be external and sometimes they'll be internal. And that's why the Shnei Luchot HaBrit says something beautiful. He says, Ikar mitzvat hatshuva hu havidui bepeh belev nishbar. That every person approaches the high holidays with a desire for tshuva, and the Shnei Luchot HaBrit says it comes the most beautiful, the most deep, the most meaningful tshuva, the most meaningful atonement comes in what he refers to as halev nishbar, the broken heart. We live now in a time of broken hearts, where so many loved ones have been taken from us. We live now in a broken heart in which we see horrible tragedy unfolding throughout the world. We live in a terrible time of broken hearts as we see conflict amongst friends over whether or not they should take a certain protocol of vaccinations or not. We see a broken heart in a community that struggles to come up with the best answers for its own community as we approach the high holidays. And it's from that place we can find tshuva, we can find atonement. And so today I ask you to do one thing only. Don't apologize to your neighbor. Don't apologize to your community. Start today by apologizing to yourself for the things you have done wrong to yourself this year. As we prepare for the holidays, we're going to make that outward movement. But it has to start internally. It has to start with the pain we've inflicted ourselves. How many times we've told ourselves we're not good enough. How many times have we told ourselves, I wish I was as talented as someone else. I wish I were as good as they are. Today I say, start by apologizing to yourself. Because once you feel at one with yourself, then you can truly make peace with others. The Shnei Luchot HaBrit, I think, says it most beautifully. Confession begins with confessing to yourself. From a broken place, you can find repair. From a broken world, we can find tikkun, repair. And I pray that to be Me'Rabbi Ameinu speedily in our day. And let us say Amen. We continue with Musaf It's introduced by the Chatzi Kaddish, page 184.